Forsberg pulls up for three. Boom! Knocks it down.
Curry from the corner at three. Puts it in.
For overtime, makes it Garrett. Right.
Welcome to the latest edition of the MVP cast from me, Mark, with something a little different for you this week as we talk about basketball from the perspective of the pathways through it and how they can shape and influence. My guest is someone who was on track to play professionally, but who was thrown the curveball of injury and initially had to deal with that and then to discover a new rewarding path. And he's coming to the UK next month to share his story. Cornell Thomas, welcome to the MVP cast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's tell people a little bit about this journey and this story that you found, because you were a talented young player. You got a college scholarship to Mino State University in North Dakota. Then, as lots of people do, at the end of that, you think, I could maybe get a deal. How about we pursue this? And you get yourself this professional contract in Portugal. So if I leave the story there, you pick it up.
Sure. So I have to jump back a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason I have to jump back is because I wasn't talented at all. So,
I think you're probably being modest, but yes.
Yeah, but when I first started playing basketball here in the States, kids that play basketball, they start like at the age of like in the womb, right? Like they come out the womb and then they're handed a basketball. I didn't start playing basketball till I was 16 years old. That's the first time I ever picked up a basketball. So coordination wise, I grew 6 inches from my sophomore year in high school when I was 15 till when I was 16 years old. So I wasn't very coordinated. I picked up basketball because I had a cousin in another state that was this all-American basketball, football, and track stud. And I saw a bunch of newspaper articles about him. And in my head, I told myself that I'm going to be him. I'm going to be my cousin Carlos. I'm going to be in the newspaper for the first time. I'm going to be this big athlete. I didn't realize the amount of work it took going from zero to being that type of level athlete. So because of my mom, she raised 5 of us on, her own since I was 4 years old. My father passed away from cancer when I was 4. I already had that work ethic in me. My mom worked 3 jobs since I can remember. So the easiest transition for me with basketball was just the work ethic side. I knew how to work. So I put 7 hours, 8 hours a day into basketball. My junior year in high school, I got cut actually from the varsity team. I played junior varsity, which is basically a place where kids that aren't good play. And then my senior year, I played varsity because there's nowhere they could put me. And I played for maybe, a minute a game. Now I'm 17 right now, and I'm only playing a minute a game, and my goal is to play professional basketball. So after high school, my mom sat me down and she said she couldn't afford to send me to college, to a 4-year school. So a lot of kids, like you mentioned before, they go to high school and they want to go to uni, they want to go to college, they want to, go get out there and, show people their skills and maybe get a scholarship. I wasn't good enough. I barely played on my high school team, which wasn't good at all. So I told my mom I have this plan. I'm going to work 2 jobs and then I'm going to go to a 2-year college, which in the States is called a junior college. And then from there, I'm going to get a scholarship to play at a 4-year school. And then from there, I'm going to play professional basketball. And so my mom said, okay, show me what you got. And I worked 2 jobs. My first year at my junior college, I started a game for the very first time. So my first time I've ever started a game, I was 19 years old, started a game. So I started a game for the first time. I still wasn't very good. And then my sophomore year, that's where everything took off. My skills finally started to catch up with my work ethic. First team all conference, all region, all whatever, all these accolades. I get a scholarship to play in North Dakota at Minot State University. Have a good career there, come back home. I'm playing with NBA guys, all the older guys, like the younger audience probably won't recognize the names, but you might, guys like, Derek Coleman and I was around Charles Oakley and all these like names that would come down to this gym, Jason Williams, and play basketball. And so I was working out with these guys, and then about a year and a half goes by and I get a contract to play in Lisbon, Portugal in their top division. And so back then the internet wasn't what it is now. It was completely different. So the internet, it took like 4 hours to read the email. So I got this email and I'm looking at it. I'm like, let me refresh this. This can't be what I think it is. And I maybe read the email about 50 times, which took me like an hour. And I said, oh, wow, I got this contract. I told my mom We had this going away party. And then a week before I was supposed to go, I was just playing basketball with some of my friends. And I went to go to the basket. And I heard a pop. So I fall on the ground. My friends come running over to me. They pick me up. I can't put any weight on my right foot. And I said, okay, I'm going to get myself to the hospital. Get myself to the hospital. The doctor looked at it. He said, Cornell, he goes, I know that you're supposed to leave in a week, but we have to do surgery on Thursday. You ruptured your Achilles tendon. And to this day, that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I cannot tell you what happened. I have no recollection of those days. All I remember is Thursday morning being wheeled in for surgery, Thursday afternoon coming out with a hard cast from the middle of my thigh to the end of my foot. And by Thursday night, my contract was already voided. And then that Friday morning, that next day, my mom kissing me on my forehead and me watching her walk to one of the 3 jobs I told her she'd never have to work again. So that's the athlete's nightmare, where you're just sitting there like all this work that I've put in, all the sacrifice, all the not hanging out with my friends and trying to go, chase girls and all that other stuff that kids do, for nothing. Like now the dream that I have is never going to come to fruition. So I sat there, feeling sorry for myself for that day. And I called up one of my best friends at the time, my buddy Kevin, and I said, hey, I need you to pick me up on Monday. And he said, well, why? And I said, just pick me up. So from that Monday, for the next 6 months, I shot from a chair. And it did nothing for me basketball-wise, but it did everything for me mentally. And I started to work myself back, and then I got an opportunity, ironically, to coach at the junior college that I started at Sussex County College. My old coach was the athletic director there, and he said, hey, our coach just left. Would you coach? And I reluctantly said yes, because I couldn't come to grips with the fact that I wouldn't be playing professional basketball. So this new journey for me seemed like I failed, kind of. And then right when I started coaching, I realized that I wasn't meant to play professional basketball. I was meant to help other people. So I coached at junior college for 6 years. We had some really, really high highs and some super big lows. I'm writing a book about one of those low seasons. We didn't win a game. And I ended up getting an opportunity to coach at Blair Academy, where Luol Deng went to school.
I mean, we'll touch on the Blair, but
Yeah.
you go back to the injury. Obviously, people are more aware of Achilles since
Yep.
people like Kobe Bryant, DeMarcus Cousins suffered it. We know. I think people appreciate the magnitude of that injury. And obviously, they're 2 top-level players with top-level surgeons, top-level teams to rehab them back into it. When you were going through that process, and obviously, I suppose there may be an element of self-denial, there's maybe not optimism, but when you try to come back from that, what sort of helped you not go crazy other than shooting a ball on a day-to-day basis? Did you focus on maybe I can recover from this, or did it was let me make myself whole first so this thing doesn't hurt as much anymore?
Yeah. That's a great question. For me personally, the first thing that I thought about, which helped my road to recovery, is what I've been through up until that point already. So I grew up, we grew up hard, so thinking about that and realizing that I've been through things way worse than this Achilles injury. And then the second thing was that silver lining that I can work myself back. Like, I know I can get better. I might not be 100%, but I damn sure won't be 50. If I just push, I can get there. So I think just realizing that, and as human beings, we tend to forget that, right? We tend to forget that we've been through adversity before. And even though adversity is different, a lot of times when it hits us, if you've been through it once, you can probably get through it again. Your mind starts to get a little callous to it. So that was the first thing. And then just saying I can do it. I can get better. I know I can. And just knowing that there's people that have had Achilles injuries. Dominique Wilkins, an older player, was one of them. He had an Achilles injury. He came back the next season, averaged 29 points a game. So I just kept all these things fresh in my head where, hey, there's other human beings that did this. So if they did it, you can do it. Get up and make it happen. And I think that has a lot to do with how I was brought up. I think if I was brought up in a really cushy lifestyle and I had never been through anything, that might have just crippled me, but I wasn't. So I was able to use my, background, my experience with adversity to help me combat this new adversity that came into my life.
I mean, you'd say about almost falling into coaching, and it is a familiar tale for people who get injured. That somehow they find their way into this track that they weren't expecting to do, and it's the plan B, I suppose, for a lot of players, even when they retire, I guess, as well. But what what usefulness did you take from the process of being able to work hard, but also being able to push through a very difficult situation and discipline yourself to do that, which obviously then when you translate it into the training, practice, coaching, learning environment is the kind of attributes that you want for your players.
Yeah. I think it's a gift and a curse though, because when I first started coaching, I was coaching everybody like they were supposed to be me. I was a young coach. I was 25 years old, and I'm like, well, why aren't you guys in the gym 8 hours a day? I was in the gym 8 hours a day. So I was looking at it as a player, and you can't look at coaching as how you play basketball. It's completely different. Now you can empathize with some of the things they go through. You've ran sprints, you've ran hills, you know how they suck and blah 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 blah. But when you coach, it's a different level of understanding that you have to have for the game. It is a different level of inspiring your players that you have to have. You have to realize that not everybody's you, and even though you have the same non-negotiable rules for the team, each individual is different. So I might be able to yell at Johnny, but if I yell at Mark, I might not. He might collapse for the next month, right? So I think that was the understanding of human beings was probably the thing that I had to start realizing right away is because I came in there like Coach Carter times 50. I was just like, what are we doing? Why aren't you in the gym? You don't need to eat. Like I was the worst young coach ever. So I think just understanding my players and getting in tune to who they were, I think that's when I started becoming a little bit better as a coach.
You went to Blair Academy, as you said, and lots of people in this country know Blair as being the
Sure.
place that produced Luol Deng, produced Timmy
Yep.
Bentley, Justin Robinson, and as well. And going there, Joe Montaigne, it's the Luol Deng camp in London this week, and I know you've coached at that in the
Yep.
past. What
Mm-hmm.
what do you get from going into, I guess we could call it a high performance environment, because it is a place that produces 40
Yep.
plus Division 1 players, etc., and NBA players. But what do you get when you are able to take, I guess, what you've learnt from those environments into a place where there's talent that you can mold into something of quite a high level?
Yeah, it was easy for me, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm used to dealing with second chance, third chance kids. I'm used to dealing with kids that I'm used to having a 6 foot center, right? I'm going to Blair. The kids are 6'11". They're 7 foot. I got guards windmill dunking. I'm like, okay, well, this is easier. So I went to Blair because of Coach Montagna. I went there after I met with him. We had a meeting. Actually, one of my junior college teams scrimmaged one of his Blair teams, and he was very impressed with how hard we played. So I went there only because of him. I knew a little bit of the history, but once, I mean, he's a Hall of Fame coach. I thought, hey, I can learn from this guy and take away, and I think that he can learn some things from me in terms of, you know, my style. And he was just the most gracious, non-egotistical human being that I've ever met. He said, Cornell, come in here. I want you to think like a head coach. So at that time, my game plan was to go to coach at Blair and then be a Division I head coach, or be a Division I assistant, then eventually a head coach. And the kids there, they want to be there. The kids that I had in junior college, a lot of them didn't want to be there. Some of them didn't. The kids at Blair want to be there. Justin Robinson, he knew what he was doing when he came to Blair. Luol Deng the same way. It's not just an athlete factory; it's an academic factory. So if you don't have good grades, you can't come to Blair. If you don't want to learn, you can't stay at Blair. So you end up having this well-rounded human, as you can see with all the work that Luol does for Africa, London. You have these well-rounded humans that come out of there ready for life, instead of going to a school right away, college right away, maybe not getting the same culture and being unprepared for life.
How important is that? Because I talk a lot to to coaches, and they're looking to steer their kids to go to the States to maybe do a senior year at high school, maybe go directly to college on a scholarship. How important is it when you work a lot with kids now, particularly teen kids? How important is it to try and find that balance, or how do you find that balance between getting something that's good for you basketball wise, but also getting something that's going to work for you in the long term?
Yeah, it's very tough because I'll be honest with you. A lot of people say, "Oh, I got a plan B and a plan C." I had a plan A. Plan A was basketball. Plan B was basketball. Plan to A to Z was basketball. So I didn't have any other plan except for basketball. And I think it's very hard to tell a kid, especially a kid that doesn't come from a lot, that listen, man, it's like a less than 1% chance you can play professional basketball, because you don't want to crap on their dreams. You don't want to say, "Hey, you'll never play," but you also have to give them a dose of realism where if you're not putting in 8 hours a day and you're not genetically gifted. I mean, Luol's what, a 6'8" guard, right? If you're a 6'1" guard and you don't have the athleticism or the IQ that Luol has, I don't know if you're going to beat him out. On top of the fact that he's a killer, his mindset is what it is. So I try to tell kids that I will help you get to where you have to go with, if it's realistic to the amount of sweat equity you put into the game. So if you're a 5'8" kid and you're telling me that you want to be a center in the NBA, I'm going to tell you, listen, I love you, but that ain't happening. Right? That just ain't happening. Or if you're a 6'10" kid and you're soft as toilet tissue and you don't work on your game and you don't want to fight and scrap, I'm going to tell you, hey, you know what? You're going to go somewhere for 4 years to a college and you're going to be somebody's practice dummy because now they have a 6'10", dummy that can put his arms up instead of being a player. So you need to start working on your game. So just being able to be at Blair and learn from coach and have these high-level student athletes shows me it's possible that these kids can for sure make that transition and be truly become student athletes and not just athletes.
Well, to be fair, we have seen 6'10" soft dummies still get drafted in the NBA. So all things are possible when you're 6'10".
Very true. Very true.
Let me just ask you about Luol. I mean, you come over to coach at this camp. What were your impressions of the talent that you find you're giving you? There's a bunch of talents currently in London going through their paces this year.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you just about the man first. And I've met, Luol multiple times. I don't hang out with Luol. He's not like my best friend. Like we don't, have walkie-talkies and talk to each other every day. But being around Luol for 5 minutes, you get a sense of who he is as a person. He is a person that his mission on the planet is to help other people. And that's the thing I loved about Luol the most, is that he's just a very gracious human being. And, starting this Deng camp to unite, Sudanese and unite Africa, really. When I first worked it, just seeing all these super talented kids from Africa that would, who knows where they'd be if it wasn't for Luol, play together and that have tribes that are warring. Their parents might be, or their grandparents are warring, and here they are on the same team. I said, man, this is amazing. And the talent has only gotten better. The first year he had, a bunch of Division I kids that were there, but now it's only gotten better. Like the kids that he has now, I see them on Instagram. They have 80,000 followers. They're doing dunks through the legs, windmills. So if you can get to the Luol, if you can get to the Dang camp, just in terms of learning from these type of people, and Coach Matagna works every camp. If you can get there, it means you're one of the elite kids in the area.
What was your impression of British talent? Were you obviously you've seen a little bit of it, Blair, but were you impressed, surprised by anything that you found?
So I did a basketball clinic. Another kid that I work with at Blair Academy, who I call my little brother now. His name is Joe Hart, and I went up to Shrewsbury in 2015, and I ran a basketball clinic. And I wasn't in London. I was in this small area, and I was like, wow, the basketball's kind of behind, way behind in terms of kind of the access that we have to basketball. Just like your football here is way more advanced than, who knows, like probably everywhere almost. So I think it's just the kids don't have the access to basketball in some kind of those outer areas. But you see now that these kids like, Justin Robinson and Luol are perfect examples. These kids that have basketballs in their hands since they're young, it doesn't matter where they're from. They compete with everybody, right? So I think that basketball is going to really start to, especially with the Dang camp and some of the other things that are happening, I think it's going to start to really take off in London. It will never be as big as football here ever, but you're starting to see some kids that can really play ball. They're doing some big things.
Basketball in Shrewsbury, that's really off the charts.
Yeah,
it's not many Americans find basketball in Shrewsbury Valley.
Yeah.
Having had all this experience, you wrote your first book, and it was called The Power of Positivity: Controlling Where the Ball Bounces. I guess a lot of that was taking what you learned from the injury, and I suppose about rather than why me, why did this happen to me, about what I do now. I mean, where did the idea of becoming, an author, and I guess, I don't know what you'd call it. How would you describe your job title? As a positivity consultant? What's the job title, I guess?
I say when I speak, I'm a professional conversationalist. I get paid to have amazing conversations with people, but I'm also a social entrepreneur. So the events that I do, I want them to have some type of social impact. I started writing books, and the books, people think that like I started becoming a speaker and going all over. It was like this magical thing, or I went to this coaching, program or whatever. None of that is true. I was on Facebook and I was reading my timeline, and it was just really negative. So a friend of mine gave me a book of positive quotes, and I was taking quotes out of the book and putting it on social media so people can see something more than just doom and gloom. And then eventually I lost the book and I started writing my own quotes, and then the quotes became blogs and the blogs became books. That's how it all started. I was just tired of seeing negativity on my social media platform, and I said I want to change it, and then it just went from there.
Is that, I think, something we've spoken about it a lot, social media and sport, over the last few weeks here, especially with abuse of soccer players, and obviously NBA players have spoken about this as well. I mean, how tough is it, do you think, to, within this age of social media, for if you're someone in the public eye, or even, to be honest, using it from day to day, I mean, how important is it to be aware of not getting sucked into that negativity, or actually not being part of the negativity?
Yeah, well, you're always on, right? That's the difference. Thank God there wasn't social media when I was coming up. Like who knows? Like, who knows? What would be coming out now? So you're always on. People can take a picture of you, and you could be, feeding a deer, and they could say, "Oh, animal cruelty there," or he was punching a deer. So you can, that's the hardest thing I talk to my athletes about. Be very careful with what you post, because it's an electronic footprint that goes nowhere, that can always be used against you. So you have to be very aware of it, social media wise. And in terms of negativity on social media, you can unfollow or follow whoever you want. So if you're following people that just post negative things, then that's on you. That's not on them. They're going to do what they innately do every day. So I don't have people on my timeline that are all about just negativity all the time and upset all the time, because that's going to affect my mood, and life is too short to have my mood affected by that nonsense.
I mean, mental health has become such a big part of the conversation in sport over the last couple of years. And you've got prominent players like Kevin Love, DeMar DeRozan, talking very frankly and very honestly about how they can struggle to cope with this high pressure, high performance environment. How they, even guys like them, very successful, top of their game, can struggle to be motivated and everything. I mean, how do you, having come through that tough part of challenges, I mean, how, if you speak to people who have those issues, how do you, and everyone's individual obviously, but how do you think people can best deal with that now?
Yeah, well, I will tell you this: your champion, Tyson Fury, is who I listened to on Joe Rogan podcast one day, and it was about a 2 hour and 45 minute interview. So here you have this hard man that is, if not the best heavyweight boxer in the world, one or two of the best heavyweight boxers in the whole entire world, talking about this vulnerable topic. And I think one of the biggest things with men, especially, is being vulnerable and letting people know, like, we don't have it all figured out, and sometimes, we can't take it, right? And we need help. And we're just kind of brainwashed when we're younger into, just being hard all the time and not letting emotion out, not asking for help. And it just kind of boils up to the point where you can't take it anymore. So when I deal with people that are going through anything mentally, the first thing I have to do, is I have to be empathetic. Because like you just said, everybody handles things differently. I can't look at someone and say, well, I would get through that easy. Because what's easy for me might be hard for them, and for vice versa. So the first thing I have to do is come at it with empathy. The second thing, most people that I deal with that are going through something, they need someone to listen, not tell them this is the problem, but no, like, actually listen to what's going on. So it's empathy, active listening, and then the third thing I really do believe is brainstorming ideas to get through it together. Because if I just give you a fish, right, you eat for a day. But if I teach you how to fish, you can eat for the rest of your life. So if I just give you answers and there's no onus on you, when I'm gone, you're going to go right back to where you were. So those are the 3 steps that I go through: empathy, active listening, and then brainstorming. Okay, how do we get through this together? And realizing that, hey, I'm with you. Like, you're not alone. I got you.
Do you find that with, because you've an AAU team and you work a lot with particularly teenage boys, and you look at that group as being impressionable, and they look at sports stars, athletes as role models. Do you think that message is coming back down to kids of that age group, that it's okay to be vulnerable, it's okay to admit that this is difficult, that it is emotionally testing? Is what people are saying, like a Kevin Love or DeMar DeRozan, is that coming back down and influencing kids now?
I would hope it is. I always tell people, like, make your parents your role models, and if your parents aren't role models, find the uncle. If your uncles aren't role models, find the teacher, because we put these like athletes on this pedestal and we forget that they're human. You know, when people come out about, like Kevin Love was talking about it, people are like, "What? Kevin Love? How could he possibly?" Well, he's a freaking human being, just like your neighbor having it, just like your mailman having it. So I think that hopefully these athletes are extremely brave to come out and say these things. Hopefully, if kids do follow them that way as role models, etc., hopefully they're learning something from them, and that has a reverse effect as well, right? Because if you're looking at them as role models, not the Kevin Loves and the other people that are doing amazing things, but the ones that aren't doing amazing things, you know, when they start going out and doing crazy stuff, you know, you're hoping that your kids aren't following that pattern and go doing crazy things. So I would say, if you look at your parents first, and if you can't, then find someone else that's in your life that you might know that have a relationship with, because everything we see in social media is a highlight film. You know, we don't see the real what's really happening. You know, we see kind of the best of what's supposed to be going on in someone's life, if it's even going on.
Do you worry that mental pressure, and I mean, we've all had mental pressure when we were teenagers. It's not a new concept, but I think the different kind of pressure now to be always seen to be good, to be always seen to be doing incredible things, to never be off your game. Do you
Yeah.
think that with younger players now, that is putting a different kind of, I'm not saying a blockade in a way, but it's an extra hurdle you have to jump over, that someone who might be talented, someone who might be really good, but could actually be stopped from realizing their potential because of that acute need to always succeed in the eyes of their peers?
Yeah, I think it's the parents more than anything in America. Where I'm from, it's parent pressure. Parent pressure is the number one killer of athletes. I'll tell you that right now. It's not coaches, it's not their peers, it's parents. The parents, and the thing, and I deal with parents all the time. I've been dealing with them for 15, 16 years. The parents don't realize the amount of pressure they're putting on the child. You might go to some AAU tournament that is like the lowest level AAU tournament, and you have parents literally getting out of the stands yelling at the kids who will never play either high school, probably not even high school basketball, but will never play after high school. And so it takes the fun out of the game. You know, I have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, and people ask me, "Oh my goodness, your kids must be playing basketball right now." I'm like, "No, they're not. If they want to play basketball, that'd be great. Their mom plays and played, and their dad played. But I'm not going to put this crazy pressure on them, because I've talked to kids that are 11 years old that were having anxiety attacks before games because they didn't want to have that ride home with their mom or dad, with them yelling at them and telling them how bad they played because they didn't score 20 points. They could have 50 assists, but you didn't score 20 points. So you have a lot of parents that don't know the game that they're yelling at their kids about, and that's a big issue. That's one thing that I'm actually working on right now, is working on a parent initiative to bring fun back into games, so they're not ruining their kids, love of whatever sport they're playing.
How do they do that? What's the route to change that culture? Because it's not just a US thing. It happens everywhere.
Everywhere. Yeah, I think the parents have to understand first it's a game, and then they have to understand the life expectancy of the athlete. Most people are going to retire after high school. They'll never play again, ever. They won't play college. They won't play at university. They're mostly, I'd say, probably 75% of the kids are going to play. 80% are going to play high school basketball, and that's it. And then they're going to go to college and have fun in college or uni and enjoy it, and then go out to the regular world. So if you only have a short time, if you have a 7-year lifespan of being an athlete, and you're going to ruin that 7 years, I mean, the kid's never going to have it again. So I think it's the parents, it's on the parents and the coaches, because the coaches, for me, like when I have my AAU team, I have a parent meeting before every season, and I let them know very bluntly, I'm the coach, you're the parent. I don't want to hear you when I'm coaching your kid. And when your kid drives home after having a bad game, I've already told them that they can play better. They're saying it to themselves that they can play better. Make the ride home enjoyable. The only time I would ever get on a kid that's my own after a game is if they showed bad character or bad attitude. But if they're working as hard as they can, still get them ice cream, win or lose. get them ice cream. As long as they're playing hard, they're being a good teammate. So I think it's just educating the parents and realizing, and it's hard because, it's your kid and you're passionate, you get it, but, you don't want to ruin the game for them.
Let me talk about leadership as the last topic here. You're coming over to London, 14th, 15th September to speak at the Positivity Summit. And a lot of what you do is educating business leaders or helping people succeed in that. And we've spoken a lot in the previous edition of this podcast, talking about how basketballers coming out of the game, coming out of playing, can then go into positions of leadership, not just in business, but also in sport and giving something back, etc. And I'm asking you kind of, I guess, to take both sides of that. Your knowledge of basketball and your knowledge of business. When you're a player and you've been in that high performance environment and you've been driven to succeed and driven to overcome hurdles and bring your best on a nightly basis, what's the biggest challenge that you find, or biggest adjustment that those athletes then need to make to be successful in the world of business or in leadership?
You have to recognize it's a different game, right? The same way I said when I first started coaching, I was a horrible coach because I felt like a player. When you're an athlete and you're coming out of university, you're coming out of college, and you're going into a position of leadership, now you have to realize it's not just about you. And that's a very hard thing for athletes to understand because they're used to people singing their praises. When I go to corporations and I do talks, I do talks on culture and workshop and workshops on leadership, etc. The first thing I mention is it's not about you. It's about us. There's a great word, an African word that I love. It's Ubuntu, and it means we're only as good as each other. So if we're all in the same village and I'm a millionaire and you don't have a penny, that means we're all failing. I think that's what leaders, especially business leaders, really miss the ball on that. Everybody's important. Everybody. For the lowest person that you have on your totem pole to the highest person, everybody's important. Everybody can change the culture of your business, either indirectly, directly, bad, or good, within a second. So I think for athletes getting into business, the reason companies love hiring athletes is because they understand team and they understand how to work through things. It's just realizing that it's a little bit of a different game. Instead of fighting for a championship, you might be fighting for your bottom line. You might be fighting for a quota. You might be fighting for, whatever your ROI is in the corporate world. But there are a lot of similarities and parallels to it.
Do you think for a lot of athletes and people I know well who've retired from the sport and don't, I guess, know what their next move is going to be, and I guess some of them actually doubt that they can, some of them naturally are attracted to sport because it's what they know rather than looking into business, corporate world because it's the unknown. I mean, do you feel that a lot of those athletes probably don't understand how those skills can be really useful and can be very transferable with a little adjustment?
You're spot on with what you just said. I just had this conversation with a Division I coach right before me and you got on the phone. They don't understand that they have a transferable skill. They don't realize it. They don't realize that all that hard work, that work ethic, the sacrifice, the knowing how to play within the constraints of a team, all of that can transfer to anything that you want to put it to. Work ethic travels. If you're a hard worker, you're a hard worker. It doesn't matter what you do. And I think the athletes get so wrapped up into their identity of being that athlete for that team, they don't understand that the same thing you did in the sports arena, you can do in a corporate office.
And that's the thing for them is kind of taking that, I guess, a leap of faith, isn't it?
Yeah, and not being, and same thing is there's plenty of games where I've played where you have that nervous energy, right? Where you just what's going to happen, but you don't stay in the locker room. You go out and play it. It's the same thing with this. You have to take the step towards it. And if you get in there and it's not the right fit, then you'll know it's not the right fit. But you can't sit on the couch hoping for something to happen.
Because then you get fat and overweight and you end up looking like Derek Coleman in his prime. Which nobody wants.
100%. Nobody wants that.
Cornell, it's been really fascinating talking to you today. If you want to follow Cornell on Twitter, he's at Cornell Thomas, or his website's cornell-thomas.com. Enjoy your trip to London when it comes, and appreciate your time in joining us on this edition of the MVP Cast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Thanks, Cornell. That's it for this edition. You can catch all our previous episodes via our website at mvp247.com, including our recent chats with Great Britain captain Dan Clark, or subscribe via your preferred podcast provider. Another edition coming very soon. From me, Mark Woods, it's goodbye.